Hello and welcome to We Learn, Virtual Learning Network. This is session number 9 of the subject Modern Indian Political Thought and the chapter Sri Aurobindo's Political Thought. Let's see the topics to be covered. Introduction, Sri Aurobindo, his life and work, philosophical foundation of Aurobindo's political thought early phase, the second stage from 1910 onwards, and critical evaluation. Introduction. The closing decades of the 19th and the dawn of the 20th centuries are very important in the history of modern India. During this period, religious cultural nationalism emerged as a powerful force in opposition to the Western-inspired liberalism and the British rule. Ramakrishna Paramhansa and Swami Vivekananda in Bengal and Swami Dayanand Saraswati in Punjab led a revival of interest in Indian tradition. So in 19th century and the dawn of the 20th centuries, during this period, religious cultural nationalism emerged as a opposition to the Western-inspired liberalism. The values imposed by religious or cultural nationalism, they emerged as a force in opposition to what Western concept said about liberalism, about liberal ideas, and about again the culture. So they were opposed. They put a strong opposition to the British rule. And Ramakrishna Paramhans and Swami Vivekananda led a revival of interest. They led a revival of Indian tradition. Indian tradition was to be gained more attention, and again they were given a renaissance. They were given a revival. Indian traditions and values were given a revival and they were revived. The movement resulted in a major attempt to reinterpret Indian tradition so as to instill a sense of pride in the Indian youth. So the Indian youth who were not accepting the Indian culture, who were finding the Western culture more attractive, in their minds and in their hearts, a sense of pride for the Indian culture as well as the Indian tradition, it was revived in them, and they were made sure and they were reassured that the Indian tradition or Indian culture is the best, and the values provided by the Indian culture is to be made proud upon. Sri Aurobindo, his life and work. Born in Calcutta on 15th August 1872, Sri Aurobindo lived an eventful life and contributed immensely to the fields of philosophy and politics. His lifespan can be studied by dividing it into 4 stages. Early life, formative stage. Aurobindo's upbringing was completely Western. For a period of 14 years from 1879 to 1893, he studied in England. During this period, he showed extraordinary intellectual abilities. He learnt various classical and modern European languages. So his upbringing was completely Western, and he learnt many languages. He acquired, and he also showed extraordinary intellectual capabilities and abilities. And this was about his formative stage. The preparatory phase. On arriving in India, he joined government service in the princely state of Baroda. At Baroda, he undertook a serious study of Indian history, philosophical texts, and Bengali literature. Phase of political activism. In 1905, Bengal was partitioned. This event evoked strong resentment throughout the country. Aurobindo resigned from his job in Baroda 1906 and plunged into active politics, which marked the beginning of the third phase of his life. This phase of political activism was very brief, that is 1906 to 1910. So when he saw that Bengal was partitioned, he was highly disturbed and he plunged and he joined active politics, which marked the third phase. And this phase was marked by political activism, where he politically got involved in the activities. Later phase 1910 onwards. During this period, Aurobindo wrote mainly in the wider context of humanity and its spiritual future. He elaborated his ideas and ideals in the context of human development and its ultimate goal of human unity. So he elaborated his ideas, his ideals for human development, for human unity, and also for human values. And there, from 1910 onwards, his later phase got started. His important works like The Life Divine, Essays on Gita, The Synthesis of Yoga, and the epic poem Savitri were written during this period. So during this period, a lot of poems and a lot of essays were also written by him. To sum up, we can say that his political activism and spiritual development were not separate but went together. His political thought was an extension of his yogic and spiritual vision. So his yogic and spiritual vision had another extension, that was his political thought, his political ideas, and his political activism and spiritual development. They went simultaneously, they went together. His ideas or his values on spiritual development were not separate from political ideas, whereas his involvement in political ideas or political ideologies was also very much, and he made these two arenas, political activism and spiritual development, together. Philosophical foundation of Aurobindo's political thought. Aurobindo's writings reflect diverse influences. Of these, the Indian tradition of idealism in philosophy seems to have impressed him the most. The great European philosophers from Homer to Goethe influenced him the maximum during his formative period, and the study of Gita, Upanishads, and Vedanta had a deep impact on his political thinking. The study of Upanishads had a deep impact on his thinking, and also of the Indian tradition of idealism in philosophy. He was impressed by the Indian tradition as well as the Indian culture of philosophy of idealism. He was also inspired by the remarkable vitality and diversity of the Indian intellectual tradition. He believed that the writings of the Vedantic sages and the Buddha reflect the genius of the Indian mind. And also, he was also inspired by the vitality and diversity of Indian traditions and culture, and he also believed that writings of the Vedantic sages reflect the genius of the Indian mind, and also the writings written by different authors or different sages at that particular time reflect that in India a lot of genius minds and a lot of intellectual minds exist. So he was also inspired by all these positive points and all these remarkable points about India and the Indian tradition. Political thought, early phase. A close scrutiny of Aurobindo's writings show that he wrote extensively on problem of current political importance in the early phase of his political activity. His political thought at that time consisted of his views on the Indian National Congress and the British rule in India, the concept of nation and the theory of spiritual nationalism, his program of action, theory of passive resistance, etc. He also wrote about his views on Indian National Congress and what the Indian National Congress did at that time, the members, what it consisted, its rules, ideas, ideologies, also how the British rule came here, they established themselves, and the theory of spiritual nationalism, why it is important and what are the elements important in the nation, and also his program of action, theory of passive resistance, where people sometimes passively resisted to changes but they did not take active steps. So this is what he said, or this is what his views were. And he also wrote extensively on problems of current political importance, the problems which existed in the political arena and the political activity. He also wrote about that, and he wrote extensively on the problems and issues faced by the political arena and what were the political activity at that particular time. His views on the Indian National Congress. When Aurobindo returned from England, he observed the political scene and expressed his views through his writings in journals like Bande Matram. He was critical of the Congress organization and its leadership at that time. He criticized the Congress on 4 counts: its aims and objectives, its composition, the motives of the leaders, the methods adopted by them for the realization of their aims and objectives. So he criticized the Indian National Congress on its aims as well as its objectives, the aims and objectives, the composition, the people who consisted, and the way it ran and the way they conducted the Indian National Congress, their ways, methods, ideologies, and also the motives of the leaders which were involved over there. And the methodology is adopted for the realization of aims, goals, and objectives as well. So he was critical of the Indian National Congress on these 4 counts, or all on these 4 points. Nature of the British rule. Aurobindo's first political writings in Indu Prakash, an Anglo-Marathi paper, was a direct attack on British rule. Of course, some leaders participating in the national movement were also criticizing British rule at that time, but their criticism was quite indirect. He directly criticized the British rule in his famous paper Indu Prakash, an Anglo-Marathi paper, where he directly said, or where he attacked the British rule, the way they were establishing their business, or the way they were ruling the Indian people. His writing was a departure from this style of expression. He created such a sensation in the country that Justice M.G. Ranade had to warn the editor of Indu Prakash to be careful, and subsequently the editor had to request Aurobindo to modify his tone, which he did rather reluctantly. He created quite a sensation in the country, to which the editor had to request him to modify and to pacify his tone, which he did, but he reluctantly did. Aurobindo reluctantly did. Concept of nation and theory of spiritual nationalism. Aurobindo's concept of nation was deeply influenced by Bankim Chandra, a great Bengali novelist. He believed that the nation is not just a piece of land nor a mass of human beings. It's neither a figure of speech nor the creation of mind. It's something more than a geographical unit or a figment of people's imagination. Thus, his concept of nation is profound and very different from the commonly held patriotic notions about the nation. He said that nation is not just a piece of land or a boundary which is drawn, or a mass of people, or any creation of mind or mankind, or a geographical unit where people live, or where it is a defined place and territory. And also it is not people's imagination, and it is not a place where patriotic notions were held or where people lived. It is not a place. State is definitely this, but it is far more beyond this. According to Aurobindo's understanding, the nation is a mighty Shakti, composed of all the Shaktis of all the millions of units that make up the nation. So it is a divine thing. It is a powerful Shakti, which is also composed of all the Shaktis, of all the millions of units, of all the people. It consisted of the power of the Shakti, which millions of people at that point of time consisted, and which made up the nation. So it in itself was comprised of, or was consisted of, all the powerful and all the power of the people, which it derived from them, which it takes from them. So it is also comprised, it in itself was a part, and it derived the Shakti, the power, from the people itself. Final goal, Swaraj. India's liberation from foreign domination was the final goal for Aurobindo. Swaraj, that is self-rule by Indians, was not merely of economic and political nature. Liberty being the first indispensable condition of rational development, intellectual, moral, individual and political, is in itself a necessity of national life. Hence, it was worth striving for its own sake. So, India's liberation from foreign domination was the final goal for Aurobindo. Yes, India's liberation from foreign domination has to be there. That is, Swaraj should be there, where Indian people should rule by themselves. But more importantly, liberty was also an indispensable condition which has to be given to people, and that has to be the birthright of every individual. Whether liberty is intellectual, individual, political, economic, moral, psychological, or of national life, but it's worth striving for. Secondly, in the process of development of human beings, spiritual and moral advance is more important than material advance. Rather than gaining money, or rather than striving for money, it is more important to develop people, or it is more important for human beings' spiritual and moral development, rather than the development of the materials, of the money. India must have Swaraj to live well and happily. So there has to be self-rule. People should rule. The Indian people should rule, and no foreign domination, no external control should be there, because if external control be there, people cannot live happily and in a fulfilled manner. There has to be Swaraj, there has to be self-rule by Indians, so that Indians can live peacefully and happily. Positive program of political action. According to Aurobindo, this limitless reservoir of inner strength and power of the people could be channelized through different kinds of political actions, through secret revolutionary propaganda by setting up revolutionary organization. The object of this action was to prepare for an armed insurrection. Secondly, continuous propaganda against foreign rule through writing, speeches, public contacts. So basically, Aurobindo said that India's or the people of the strength and power of the people could be channelized in the sense that revolutionary propaganda can be thrown up by setting up a revolutionary organization wherein the action was to prepare for a violent revolt, for a violent insurrection where the British rule can be overthrown, and also through various propaganda like speeches, writings, public contacts, meetings. Thirdly, mobilizing the masses through various organizations to carry an open and total opposition to foreign rule through methods of non-cooperation and passive resistance. To also not follow the British rule and the British policies and to not cooperate with them. And passive resistance should be shown to them, and there should be total opposition to the foreign rule. People should not cooperate with the government and should also oppose the government, and there has to be organizations to carry all these activities of passive resistance as well. Like, people should not agree to their policies and should not be convinced about their policies. The second stage, from 1910 onwards, we've already noted that Aurobindo dramatically withdrew from politics in 1910 and moved to Pondicherry following the persistent calls from his inner self through mystic experiences. Evolution of human society. Aurobindo argues that in the course of its development, human society has to pass through three stages. The first is the stage of spontaneity. At this stage, the forms and activities of community formation, there are activities are there for community formation. Its traditions and customs and institutional setup are the result of natural organic growth. So whatever traditions, whatever customs, the institutional setup are all the result of natural organic growth and development. The second stage, from 1910 onwards, nature of human unity. It will not be a mechanical unity established under the iron law of the state or any organization, because such kind of mechanical unity will negate the diversity of various groups, individuals or race. So, nature of human unity. Basically, a state is not just a mechanical unity. It consists of humans, it consists of people which have feelings, emotions, diversity, groups. There would be no suppression of individual life or the life of smaller community. All individuals and communities will get the fullest opportunity for the full development of their potentialities and the full expression of their multifaceted diversity. So there would be no suppression of individual life or their own feelings, but they will get the full opportunity to develop their talent, to develop their potential, and also they will get full opportunity to fully realize the expressions of their multifaceted diversity. So, a critical evaluation. Theory of nationalism, spiritual or religious. In the context of his theory of spiritual nationalism, it is argued that though it is called spiritual nationalism, in reality it was religious, as we have known it, and therefore reactionary in character. It was reactionary, revolutionary, and also religious. Emphasis on political issues. Critics point out that Aurobindo paid less attention to the issues of social reform, which were perhaps more important and urgent. Social reform issues which were more important, urgent, less attention was paid to them. The defense of the radicals in this regard was that it was a matter of giving preference in the light of circumstances existing at that time. Because of his advocacy of force or violent means in the fight against foreign rule, Aurobindo is criticized as an anarchist as well as a terrorist in his approach and action, as he did not want a government, but only the people should rule themselves. This would create anarchy and this would create chaos. He was certainly not an anarchist, neither was he a terrorist, though he did not disapprove of the use of violence on moral and spiritual grounds. He was termed as a terrorist because he used to say that violent means should be adopted for realizing the grounds or for realizing the aims. But he was not a terrorist. He just said that violence should be used to protect oneself or on moral and spiritual grounds. That's it we have for you in this session. It was about Aurobindo's life and his actions, methodologies, ideas. These are some of the questions. You have to do it yourself. Question number 1. What are the major factors which influenced Aurobindo's political thinking? Question number 2. According to Aurobindo, what are the stages through which the human society develops? Thank you. Happy learning. We learning.